Hello, my name is Dr. Norbert Feigler, and my focus is on developing medicines to help treat COPD, and this is the COPD Medical Minute. We've talked about how COPD can cause permanent lung damage, and people living with COPD may not even realize the damage is happening. Getting diagnosed as soon as possible is critical, and so is being on the right treatment at the right time. Self-advocacy or speaking up when you need to can help with this. In this episode, we'll talk about how speaking up when something feels off can lead to an early diagnosis of COPD, a simple test that can diagnose COPD, and what to expect after a diagnosis. I'll also discuss an added risk factor associated with COPD flare-ups and provide some tips for caregivers around spotting them to help support loved ones. Let's say you're feeling shortness of breath, a frequent cough, with or without mucus, wheezing, or chest tightness. Even if you think your symptoms aren't COPD, you should still bring them up with your healthcare provider. By advocating for yourself at your appointments, bringing up your symptoms, and not waiting for them to get worse, you'll be less likely to lose valuable treatment time if you do have COPD. Ask your healthcare provider if you're a candidate for a spirometry test. Your healthcare provider will also want to know if you vape or smoke, or if you've vaped or smoked in the past. If you live in an area with poor air quality, or if you've been exposed to poor air quality conditions in the past as well. Your answers will determine if a spirometry test is needed, so it's very important to be open and honest. Spirometry is a simple test that measures how much air your lungs can hold and how fast you can blow that air out. And the test can help determine if you have COPD. If you are diagnosed with COPD, finding the right treatment as soon as possible should be your #1 goal to avoid losing more lung function and avoid possible flare-ups. As you start treatment, avoid comparing your results with others. Your doctor will assess how you feel with each one of your medications and whether it's working for you at each follow-up visit. Together, you'll make adjustments for an individualized treatment plan. It may even be necessary to change your medication, especially if you have a flare-up. You should expect a reevaluation of your treatment plan within the first 30 days after a flare-up happens. Your healthcare provider will want to adjust or step up your medication in the first 30 days instead of waiting until later to help prevent future flare-ups. Your doctor may evaluate other diseases at that time as well. Another thing to be aware of is that people living with COPD are at an increased risk of heart attack and stroke. In fact, people with COPD are at the highest risk of a heart attack or stroke within the first 5 days after a flare-up, being over 2 times more likely to experience a cardiovascular event in that time period. This risk of heart attack is increased 10 times higher after a hospitalization due to COPD. Evaluation and treatment for both conditions post-flare-up is absolutely critical. It's also important to discuss the role caregivers play after a COPD diagnosis, especially when it comes to recognizing changes in symptoms that can signal a flare-up. If you're a caregiver and your loved one is living with COPD, it's important to keep an eye out for the worsening of symptoms such as cough, shortness of breath, and increased mucus. If you notice your loved one's COPD symptoms are getting worse, you should contact your healthcare provider to discuss these changes and new treatment options. Please visit copdfoundation.org to find educational materials on how COPD is diagnosed. You'll also find materials for patients newly diagnosed with COPD and caregivers. And remember, don't ignore the symptoms. Even if you don't think they're related to COPD, waiting for things to get worse only delays valuable treatment time. Thanks for joining the COPD Medical Minute. Check out more of our videos in this series, and we'll see you next time.